Hello, I'm Will and this is Mike with the Tabletop Donkeys.
Hello.
And in this video we're looking at issue 16 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine, which came with two new paints, Mephiston Red and Squig Orange, which we'll be applying to our models in this issue. So we'll be having a look at the instructions for that, and then in our game we'll be learning some unit special rules and finally getting to see the Psychophage that we received in the previous issue on the battlefield. First up in the magazine, we have the instructions for applying our new paints. So starting with the Space Marines, we're using Mephiston Red for the Captain's Cloak and the gem on the Crux Terminatus on the Captain's shoulder pad and the Terminator Sergeant, and then several bits on the Librarian, the pipes and cables on his chest and arm and on his axe, the handle of his axe and the handle of the Captain's sword. Also the handle of the Terminator Sergeant's power sword, the Terminator Sergeant's helmet, because Sergeants have red helmets, so that also applies to the part helmet of the normal Infernus Sergeant and the helmet of the magazine exclusive Infernus Sergeant. And then getting a small point on your brush, and with a steady hand you can also paint the eye lenses of your Marines and the top of the beacon on the teleport homer. And there's the Marines with that colour applied. And you can see it really starts to bring out some of the details, the red acting as a nice sort of spot colour to really enhance the other colours you put there and provide a little bit more interest. And then we're using Squig Orange, and this is being applied to the Tyranids. So we're using this for the wings on the Winged Tyranid Prime, and the gun casings of the Termagants, and the tendrils on the Von Ryan's Leapers, and then using Mephiston Red again on the parts of the Barbgaunt's guns. And there are all of those models, again adding more colours to make them look a bit more interesting. Now we learn about the Ultramarines Space Marine chapter. In some ways the Ultramarines are the quintessential Space Marines, probably the most respected chapter in the Imperium. Their Primarch, Robita Gilliman, wrote the Codex Astartes, which is a vast tome containing tactics and organisation for Space Marine chapters, which is used by the vast majority of Space Marine chapters in the Imperium. The Ultramarines are not only great warriors, but also have leadership qualities taught to even their line troopers, so they have great tactical ability and can adapt very well to any battlefield situation. They're also unique in having a rather large empire, the 500 worlds of the realm of Ultramar. It's unusual for Space Marine chapters to have lordship over more than a few planets, but compared to much of the Imperium, these worlds are relatively pleasant, developed worlds that are a bit less oppressive for the citizens that live on them, thanks to the Ultramarines' wise rulership. But in recent years in the story, the Ultramarines have been tested as the 500 worlds were invaded by a large force of the Death Guard, Chaos Space Marines. But in their darkest hour, the Primarch Robita Gilliman himself, who'd been entombed in a stasis chamber, mortally wounded, was restored to them and healed of his wounds, and was able to rally the defenders and push the Death Guard out again. However, he then essentially inherited the Imperium in crisis and had a lot of work to do to try and stabilise it. Now we have the next part of our Bonds of Honour short story about the Silver Templars and the tale of Sergeant Ascot. When we last found them, they had just entered a Tyranid nest, and so this is continuing that story as they are ambushed by a large number of Tyranids underground. Now, they managed to fight off their attackers, but they get the impression that this is not just due to their efforts, but in fact something more sinister may be going on. Possibly they're being stalked. I'm sure we'll find out about that in the next instalment. And finally, we learn about Hive Fleet Leviathan, the one that the magazine is telling us to paint our Tyranids as. Leviathan is the largest of the Tyranid hive fleets, whose appearance began the Third Tyrannic War, and they're spread across the galaxy with multiple tendrils, unlike the more narrow attacks of the hive fleets that came before it, Kraken and Behemoth. But despite its incredible size, it appears that it has a shared knowledge across all of its hive fleets, and so tactics it encounters on one side of the galaxy, it may in fact be able to counter on the other side. And it seems to be particularly noted for the level of control exerted by its leader beasts on the battlefield, and it's very difficult to break the synaptic links that bind them together. But that's it for the lore and painting instructions, so now we're on to our gaming content, so I'll hand you over to Mike, who will teach us some new rules, and then we'll see our Psychophage on the battlefield at last.
So we have a bunch of new rules to learn in today's issue because we're finally getting to use our Psychophage, and it has a number of special rules on its data sheet. The first one is Deadly Demise. This sort of represents when a model is destroyed, it either explodes or it lashes out in its death throes and has a chance to do damage to things around it. So what happens then, when you make a Deadly Demise roll, you roll a dice, and if you roll a 6, you inflict a number of mortal wounds to every unit within 6, equal to the number next to Deadly Demise. So the Psychophage has Deadly Demise 1, so it would do 1 mortal wound if you rolled a 6 when it died, as it lashes out. And then we have Feel No Pain X. Feel No Pain sort of represents a model's innate toughness. It has a chance to shrug off damage. So every time the Psychophage fails a save and takes damage, you roll a dice for each point of damage it suffers, and for each roll of 5, or greater, because it has Feel No Pain 5+, you ignore that damage. So in this example, the Psychophage failed a save against the Infernus Marines, but then manages to shrug it with its Feel No Pain. Ignores cover we've seen before. Basically the Psychophage's ranged attack and the Infernus Marine's Power Blasters ignore cover, so when you target an enemy unit, that unit does not gain the benefit of cover against ranged attacks against the shooting unit. And then we have anti, so certain weapons are particularly dangerous against certain types of units based on what keywords they have. So the Psychophage's melee weapon has the anti-psyker keyword, or it has anti-psyker 4+. What this means is whenever a unmodified wound roll of that number or higher is rolled, it inflicts a critical wound rather than a regular wound. So anti-psyker 4+ means that whenever you roll a wound roll of a 4 or higher against a unit with the psyker keyword, it will score a critical wound. And this can combine with devastating wounds. So seen with devastating wounds, when you make a critical wound, they do not get to make save rolls against it. This combines with the anti ability. So with anti-psyker 4+, causing critical wounds on a 4 or higher, that actually means these are devastating wounds as well. So against psyker units, if you roll a 4+ to wound, they don't get any saves at all against the Psychophage's melee attacks. And when a leader joins a unit, they gain all of their leader's keywords. So if the Terminator Librarian is leading the Terminator squad, the entire unit is considered to have the Psyker keyword, so the anti-Psyker ability would affect them as well, even though there's technically only one Psyker model in the unit. So we can get on to today's game, Scenario 12, the Psyker-eater, where in response to the Space Marine's use of a Librarian, the Tyranid swarm has decided to deploy a Psychophage to try and counter him. So for the Space Marines, we'll have the Librarian, the 5 Infernus Marines, and 3 of the Terminators, whereas the Tyranids have the Tyranid Prime, Term against the Barbed Gaunts, and our new Psychophage. You can see the board there, we have deployment zones along the long edges. There are 4 objectives along the diagonal, starting from the top left to the bottom right, and we're using the 4 pieces of the covered terrain along the left and right hand sides of the board. And usual objectives, you get 5 victory points for controlling 1 objective, 5 for controlling 2, and 5 for controlling more than your opponent. It doesn't say who goes first, so I assume we're going to be rolling off. In this example, the Tyranids have gone first, and again you can pause and have a close look to see the example of the game turn. And the same for the Space Marine turn. And even though it didn't say the game length, in the green box at the bottom there, it does say the winner is the player with the most victory points at the end of 4 turns, so I'll only be playing 4 battle rounds this game. And then we have the victory outcomes, so you can pause and read them here and decide which side you want to root for. But that'll be it, so we'll get into the game. So here we are deployed in our far-flung outpost. You can see the 4 objectives. There's 1 and 2 around the middle, 3 in the bottom right, and 4 in the top left. You see my deployment. The Tyranid Prime is on my left flank, the Termagants next to him, the Psychophage near objective 1, and the Barbed Gaunts are on objective 3.
And then for my deployment, I've got the Terminators across from the Psychophage, the Infernus Marines a little bit further back than them, holding Objective 2, and the Librarian in the middle. I decided not to deploy either of my 2 Terminator units in reserves to arrive at Deep Strike because they would probably be forced back into the corners. And the Librarian isn't going to lead the Terminators because of the reason we learnt earlier. I don't want to give the entire unit the Psycho keyword because that will make the Psychophage really good against the Terminators.
And now we'll be rolling off to see who goes first.
Well, I won, so I will therefore have to take the first turn.
So we'll be into Space Marines, turn 1.
So at the start of the game I did hold Objective 2, so I gained 5 victory points in my command phase, and then we have moved everybody up. The Terminators advancing forwards, so we're going to try and punch that Psychophage before any of them get taken out. The Infernus Marines have moved to be on Objective 2 and to screen the back corner, but actually I've got 1 on the left hand side as you see it who's on Objective 4, and the Librarian is in range of Objective 2. As we've learnt, each unit can only count towards 1 objective at a time, so this way I can cover both. But then we'll do some shooting. We'll start with the Infernus Marines. They're going to put all their Pyre Blasters into the Termagants, with which they are all in range. 5d6 automatic hits. 22 hits. I don't have that many dice, so I'll do 2 batches of 11 to wound on 3s. So that's 9 to start with. And the second batch, another 9, so 18 wounds in total.
Now I'll do 2 batches of 9 saves on 5s. Get that one in the box, not on the box. So that's 7 dead. And they're all gone. The entire Termagant unit gets roasted.
Well, I'll do the Librarian next. He's going to use his Smite on the Tyranid Prime, but he'll shoot his Stormbolter at the Barbed Gaunts because it's not so good at wounding them. The Smite, I will use the Focus Witchpower version. So d6 shots with the Smite, 4, 3s to hit, 3, and 3s to wound because it's strength 6, 2, with an AP of -2.
So 6s to save. Oh, I made 1, that's important.
D3 damage, 1 only, so down to 5 wounds remaining, and then I need to check for the hazardous, see if he injures himself. Oh, on a 1, of course he does, so he takes 3 wounds and is down to 2. And 2 shots from the Stormbolter at the Barb Gaunts. They both hit on 6s. They need 4s to wound 1 with no AP.
4 plus armour, made it.
Lastly, we've got the Terminators. They're going to put all their Stormbolters into the Barb Gaunts as well. I'm not going to shoot the Psychophage because it's toughness 9, which means with a strength 4 weapon I'd be wounding it on 6s, so it's just a waste of firepower. So 12 shots hitting on 3s, because they're all in 12 inches. There's only 6 hits, wounding on 4s. 3.
3 4 plus saves, made 2. Barb Gaunt takes a wound.
And then we're on to the charge phase. The Terminators are going to charge the Psychophage. Their charge roll is a 7, which will be enough. And the Terminators are going to go in like that. Do the Sergeant's Power Sword first, 4 attacks hitting on 3s. 3 hits. We're wounding on 5s though, because it's strength 5 versus toughness 9. Nothing. And then 2 with Power Fists hitting on 3s as well. 3 attacks each. 3 hits, wounding on 5s as well, because it's strength 8, but toughness 9 is higher. Oh, well, 3 wounds, a minus 2 AP.
So these will be 5 plus saves. I made 1. And these are 2 damage each. So I will roll 4 dice for my Feel No Pain, and every 5 ignores a point of damage. So I ignore 3, so it only takes 1 in the end. It's down to 9 wounds, I believe. Psychophage gets to hit back. It has d6 plus 1 melee attacks for 4. These are hitting on 3s, getting 3, and wounding on 3s because strength 6, getting 2 at minus 1 AP.
So 3 plus saves for Terminators. We made both. But with that, that'll bring us to the end of my turn.
Yes, I suspect that fight might go on for a little while longer yet, and we'll head into Tyranids turn 1. So I gain 5 victory points because I hold objective 3. Objective 1 is contested, the Psychophage is OC 3 and the Terminators are 1 each. So my only movement is going to be the Tyranid Prime, moving up towards objective 2, attempting to try and get rid of the Librarian. There's a decent chance of killing him, but it might just be worth killing a lot of Marines. I'll have to think about it. But in the shooting phase, the only shooting is the Barb Gaunts, who are all going to shoot at the Infernus Marines. So 5d6 plus 5 shots, because the blast keyword means I get extra hits for every 5 in the unit, and there are still 5 Infernus Marines. 20 shots hitting on 3s because we didn't move. 16 hits, wounding on 3s. That looks like 12 wounds.
12, 3 plus saves. 6 fails, so we lose 3 Marines.
So in the charge phase, the Tyranid Prime is actually going to charge both of these units. His base is large enough that he should be able to get within an inch of both of them and successfully complete that charge. We'll roll just in case. An 8 is definitely enough to get him in. So that charge gets him there. He's going to put all of his attacks on the Librarian, because he's the biggest threat, and he only needs to get 1 wound through to kill him, and I really only want to stop the Infernus Marines from shooting. 6 attacks on the Librarian, hitting on 2s. They all hit, and wounding on 3s for strength 6. No, that's only 3 wounds at a AP of minus 1.
So 3 plus saves for the Librarian. Ah, we did fail one there, and it's 2 damage, so the Librarian goes down. But then that's everyone who's charged, so it's my turn to pick first because it's the Tyranid turn, and I'll pick the Terminators. Sergeant again, hitting on 3s with the sword. 2 hits, wounding on 5s, 1 at minus 2.
So a 5 plus save, failed, and a 5 plus Feel No Pain, nope, so it's down to 8 wounds.
And 2 Power Fists on 3s. 3 hits, also 5s. 1, also minus 2.
5 plus, made the armour save.
So just the 1 damage.
And I'll do its attacks now, because it's my only choice left. A d6 plus 1 for 5. Hitting on 3s, getting 3. Wounding on 3s, and 6s are still devastating, because it has the devastating wounds keyword. It does not get them on 4 plus, because the Terminators are not a psychic unit. Ooh, so that is 2 devastating wounds and 1 save at AP minus 1.
So the save is a 3 plus, which I failed as well. The mortal wounds from devastating wounds are actually applied after the normal damage, so the 2 damage will injure a Terminator, and then the mortal wound will finish him off. The second mortal wound doesn't carry over to another model. I'm going to kill off the Sergeant, because the Power Sword is just not as good against the Psychophage. And then I've just got the Infernus Marines left. I'm actually going to leave the one who's on objective 4 where he is, because then he can still hold it, so we'll just have 1 attacking. Hitting on 3s, so they all hit. Wounding on 5s though. No, nothing.
That is it. And we'll be on to Space Marines turn 2.
Before I score any victory points in my command phase, I have to roll for battle shock for the 2 remaining Infernus Marines. Leadership 6 plus, and that is a 7. So we're fine, which means they will still hold objective 4. I'll choose for them to be on that, because the Tyranid Prime is not on it, and I gain 5 and I go up to 10. And then the two Infernus Marines in melee are going to fall back because they don't want to be hit again. But if I stand on objective 2, I do actually take it off the Tyranid Prime, at least for the moment. And the two Terminators will stay in melee because I think falling back will just mean they get shot and then charged.
Yes, but because it's Space Marine turn, I get to pick, so the Psychophage gets to go before the Terminators. D6 plus 1 attacks for 2. Hitting on 3s, getting 1. Wounding on 3s. No.
And then we'll just have 6 Power Fists back at it. 5 hits, so 5s to wound. Nothing at all.
Well, that is the end of Space Marine's turn 2. And we'll be on to Tyranid's turn 2. I will gain 15 victory points because I hold objectives 3 and objective 1 now because there's only 2 Terminators on it. That puts me up to 20 victory points. The Tyranid Prime will move just so he's an inch away from the Infernus Marines, and that'll be it. And then the Barb Gaunts will shoot at the Infernus Marines. So, 5d6 shots. 23 shots, hitting on 3s. 18 hits, wounding on 3s. 13 wounds.
3 plus saves. Oh, get them in the box, it doesn't matter though. Failed plenty there.
That'll kill the remaining Infernus Marines. Just the Terminators left in the fight phase, and they get to punch the Psychophage first.
Hitting on 3s. 4 hits, wounding on 5s. 1.
With a 5+ armour save, which it failed. And 2 Feel No Pains, failed both. It's down to 6 wounds. And its attack back is 3 attacks. Looking for 3s to hit, getting all 3. Wounding on 3s, 2. No devastating, AP -1.
3 plus saves, made both. Terminators are still alive.
As we head into Space Marines turn 3.
But actually I might as well concede the game there because I have 2 models left who aren't holding an objective, so I'm going to get 0 victory points and the Tyranids are going to get 15, certainly in their next turn at the very least, and then far too many points for me to claw back even if I do kill the Psychophage, which seems unlikely because I think that melee is going to go on forever anyway. But we'll at least do this turn's round of melee and see if the Psychophage can kill them.
Well, they can kill it, you never know. So the Psychophage does get to attack first with 4 attacks on 3s. They all hit. 3s to wound. 2, no devastating.
Saves, all failed 1, so a Terminator takes 2 wounds. And then they can punch it back. Well, they only hit 3 times. Yeah, they failed to wound it again.
Definitely a Tyranid victory, because I'm going to score another 15. We'll just play out the rest of the combat between the Psychophage and the 2 Terminators. The other Tyranids aren't going to get involved. So on my turn 3, they get to fight first.
They hit 4 times. And they wound twice.
5+ armour, made 1. 2 Feel No Pains, made 1, takes 1 more damage and is down to 5. It attacks with 2 attacks back. That get 1 hit and don't wound. So then Space Marines turn 4, it gets to fight again with 2 attacks. That both miss.
And Terminators get to go. Oh, they only managed to hit once as well.
It's a bit exhausted at this point.
Which did not wound.
The last turn is Tyranid's turn 4.
Where the Terminators get 5 hits and 2 wounds. It's not actually enough to kill it.
And it failed both of its saves and ignores 2, so it is down to 3 wounds. Yeah, technically I'd have to make battle tests, but we'll just ignore that. It gets 4 attacks in its last go, hitting on 3s, getting 2, and wounding on 3s. It got a wound.
And I saved.
So, after a very, very long combat, they've got 1 and a bit Terminators and 3/10 of the Psychophage left. But again, that'll be a Tyranid victory, and we'll recap that game for you now. Well, that was the game for issue 16 of Warhammer 40,000 Combat Patrol magazine. How do you think that went?
The first thing I did went very well, roasting all the termagants, and then it was kind of downhill from there, to be honest. The Librarian obviously injuring himself was a big problem because it meant that he was one-shotted by the Tyranid Prime when he got into melee. And the Terminators did a decent wound roll against the Psychophage right at the start, but then it ignored most of the damage, and then the combat went on for the rest of the game. Yeah, not all that bad, but also not terribly surprising.
Yeah, I think the army I have here is perhaps slightly better than the one I had in the previous issue, and you have 2 fewer Terminators.
Yes, but I still start with 3 units, whereas you have 4, and we're trying to hold 4 objectives, so...
Yeah, and I don't think putting the Librarian in the Terminators is a good idea at all, because it makes them much weaker to the Psychophage.
Yeah, devastating wounds triggering on a 4+ is obviously really good against Terminators because it cuts right through their really good save, which I obviously do not want, so I probably will never put the Librarian in the unit of Terminators when the Psychophage is on the board, because it's just too much of a risk for my most powerful unit. I suppose the previous game game showed the power of the Terminators and the way that the Space Marines compensate for having low OC, just basically by killing everything. This game showed the weakness of them having low OC, because as soon as the Terminators get tied up, everything else is struggling to hold the board.
And it's probably good that you went first as well, because I think if I went first, I would have moved the Tyranid Prime and charged your Infernus Marines. There would have been a ton of Termagants on Objective 2, I think it was, and the Psychophage probably would have ended up fighting the Terminators again, just further in towards your deployment zone.
Yeah, although actually because its base is so big, it probably could have charged the Terminators and still been in range of that objective.
Again, we do start so close to each other that we can basically charge in turn 1, so...
Yes, and it does have an 8-inch move as well, so it's another speedy thing for the Tyranids that the Space Marines are going to struggle to outmaneuver. And being a big monster and having OC3 means it can stand on objectives as well, or at least take an objective from a small unit.
Yeah, and your units have a maximum OC of 5. It's going to be able to steal objectives on you much more effectively than the Tyranid Prime will. And it's really tanky compared to the other stuff. Like the Tyranid Prime and the Ron Ryan Sleepers are a bit squishy because their save isn't very good, but this, with its Feel No Pain, can shrug off quite a lot of damage.
And with a 3+ save, it toughness 9 as well. My strongest weapon is strength 8, means I'm always winning it on 5s even with those power fists. The Space Marine Combat Patrol doesn't really have anything that can deal with the Psychophage directly, I don't think. There's no big anti-tank weapons.
It's the Terminators, all 5 of them would probably beat it in melee, probably just because it's going to struggle to get through their armour as well, unless it does well with its devastating wounds.
Yeah, that is the one thing it actually struggles with, is its AP itself is not all that high. We didn't see its shooting weapon, that's also AP -1, so, and that weapon ignores cover as well, so it can't even hide from it behind the barricades, so you're only shooting that has AP, and the cover won't even help.
It's only 1 damage though, so it's not as good as it is in melee, and even though it's not clear from the magazine, all of those special rules we learned are actually universal special rules that will appear on other units as well. So even though it focused on the Psychophage having them, they will appear later on, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, and big things generally have deadly demise, vehicles exploding and big monsters going all crazy. Obviously we saw anti-Psyker, but other things have anti-infantry or anti-vehicle or something like that. So some of those should turn up in later combat patrols, so we get to see them.
But yeah, I do like the Psychophage. It is a pretty cool model, and it's kind of in the sort of mid-ground. It's bigger than things like the Tyranid Prime, but it's not a super huge gribbly monster. It's a nice sort of medium-sized big thing. It's definitely playing into more of the nightmarish giant monster feel of the Tyranids rather than just the swarms of Termagants, which don't really seem that intimidating. The paint scheme is a little bit different. I, again, went for a Starship Troopers-esque one. I based it on the tanker bugs, although the tanker bugs sort of spray fire out their front. But yeah, it's just what I based it on. It is very similar size and scope, I feel. So I don't think there's too much more to say about the Psychophage or this game or this issue. So as always, leave a like and subscribe, and tell us how you've been getting on. We've been the Tabletop Donkeys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye for now.